It's D-U-E-U tell. I see you by this point, you're reading my mind. It's time for football. We about to keep this thing moving. I'm about it, you're with it, let's do it. We gon' make this thing official, you heard me? If you're the best, then let's prove it. The goal is set to have a team become a unit, man. We about to keep this thing moving. I'm about it, you're with it, let's do it. We gon' make this thing official, you heard me? If you're the best, then let's prove it. The goal is set to have a team become a unit, yeah.
Welcome to Football Game Plan's NFL All-32 show. I am Emery Hunt, the czar of the playbook. Always appreciate you guys joining us here on Game Plus Network. And before we get into all of the games that we're going to talk about in this week's episode, I want to make sure you guys follow me on social media. Twitter at FBallGamePlan. Instagram is all one word, Football Game Plan. YouTube.com/FootballGamePlan is where you can find me on YouTube. We have a ton of great content out there on our YouTube channel. Over 20,000 subscribers. We love to get that number even higher. We appreciate all you guys locking in with us here at Football Game Plan and keeping it 100 with us all throughout our time as a company, which is creeping up on 15 years. So it's impressive. So thank you guys as always. But let's dive into what we're going to talk about today. A lot of games on the schedule. There are 4 teams that are on the bye, one including the Philadelphia Eagles. But we'll start with the team that plays in the state of Pennsylvania, and that's Pittsburgh, as tonight they take on the Minnesota Vikings. This is going to be a huge matchup for Pittsburgh. They're coming off of a fantastic overtime win against the Baltimore Ravens last weekend. Now, however they got the win, that doesn't matter. What matters is that it ended with a W in the win column, and that's the most important thing. So, when you look at their record, they're 6-5-1. This is about the time where we start to see head coach Mike Tomlin get his team rallied around him and going in the right direction. Defensively, we saw a much better effort from their defense against Lamar Jackson. Offensively speaking, they did what they had to do in the back end of that game. They scored 17 straight points to take the lead, and Baltimore needed a last-second drive and went for 2 to try to win that ball game. But you love what you saw from the defensive side of Pittsburgh and the offensive side of football in the back end of the game. They're facing a Vikings team that's coming in trying to get a win. They took a hard loss last week against the Detroit Lions, giving the Lions their first victory of the season. Now, here's the thing about Minnesota. We've said this before. When they're playing a team that is a good team, you have to wonder about the Kirk Cousins effect. We don't know if Dalvin Cook is going to be back there at tailback, so it's going to be shorthanded again. Coming on a short week, Kirk Cousins versus a very good football team, an aggressive defense, is going to be what to watch for. Now, some people may say Pittsburgh is not a good team, but they do have the elements of what we like to say is a good team or a good defense. They still have pressure out there with TJ Watt and company. They're still able to turn the ball over. They're aggressive. They fly to the football. They're going to give this offense some problems. So when you're betting on Kirk Cousins or whether or not the Steelers defense will have a collapse, you got to side with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think Pittsburgh gets the win here on the road, stacking wins, 2 wins in a row. And if they get 2 more wins, so if they win tonight, which will give them 7, and they win next week, which will give them 8, that puts Mike Tomlin right there at 8 wins, which will ensure that he won't have a losing season. So it'll be fascinating to see the Pittsburgh Steelers get through the rest of the schedule and see how it goes. But I do think they'll take care of business tonight. Minnesota's a little bit beat up, and such a heartbreaking loss last week to lose like they did on last play of the game to the Detroit Lions on 4th down. So it's just a tough way to go out. I think they'll let that one loss become 2. So I'm taking Pittsburgh on the road tonight against Minnesota. Talking about the team that they just defeated, the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Baltimore Ravens, they travel to Cleveland to take on the Browns. Now, the Browns are also beat up coming into this ball game, but Baltimore is even more beat up. On the last play of regulation, or the 4th quarter, we saw Marlon Humphrey go down with an injury. He's out for the season with a torn pectoral muscle. That's a hard blow right now to a team that has lost most of their stars, but the one star they still have is Lamar Jackson, who still, in my opinion, is the best player on the field no matter what game they're playing in, but he has to start playing better. He's been a little bit reckless with the football in terms of passing. You've seen a lot of unnecessary interceptions, refusal to hit the checkdowns. All of those things he has to clean up if they want to have success, because if they don't, they can find themselves just slowly falling down those playoff rankings. And You don't want to see them fall completely out of the playoff picture, but they started last week at number 1. They lost to Pittsburgh, and now they're number 3 or 4 right now. I think they're number 3 right now. So they have to make sure they get it back on the right track. Now, the good part about Cleveland is that if they are able to run the football and operate off play action, they may take some opportunities, some shots down the field against a very beat-up secondary. And that should help Baker Mayfield kind of ease into the game. But the problem is the last time we saw these two teams play, we saw the Baltimore Ravens do a fantastic job versus the run and put a lot of pressure on Baker Mayfield. They only played 2 weeks ago, and that was a turnover fest. If you remember, Lamar Jackson had 4 interceptions. Baker Mayfield had a couple of turnovers himself. They couldn't really get going on either side of the football. Maybe they just withheld a lot of what they wanted to show because they were going to play each other within 2 weeks. Cleveland is coming off this bye, so we'll see if that matters. But, man, you have to look at what we did last week or 2 weeks ago and say maybe both teams were trying to play it safe. But I doubt that was the case. They just really had an off night. So I'm going to go with the better team. I feel like Baltimore, even in their beat-up state, will find a way to knock out the Browns in Cleveland. So I am a big fan of this matchup because, again, it's an opportunity for Cleveland to get back on the right track. This is the game that screams they should win based off how Baltimore's secondary look, based off how ineffective the offense has been. It just seems to be out of sync. This should be a game that the Browns should win. But I'm still going with the Baltimore Ravens to get the win on the road and continue to widen that lead between them and the rest of the teams in the AFC North. We'll take a quick break and be back with more football game plans, NFL All-32, here on the Game Plus Network. Welcome back to Football Game Plans, NFL All-32 show here on the Game Plus Network. Emery Hunt, the czar of the playbook, jumping right back into some of these games that we're going to be checking out this weekend. Jacksonville taking on the Tennessee Titans. And this is a matchup for Tennessee where you're facing a team that you are better than, one that you should win, one that seems to be on paper in your advantage. But we will learn a lot about this team if they can put away a squad like Jacksonville. Ryan Tannehill has to play some really good football here. He's got to show people that he's not reliant on a strong run game because that's been a knock on him. Who's been the reason for the Titans' success? Was it Ryan Tannehill? Was it Derrick Henry? And a lot of people thought, maybe it was Ryan Tannehill, and that's why they gave him that money. And now that Derrick Henry is out, we're seeing Ryan Tannehill struggle, and they've been a little bit beat up as well. But I think when you look at their defense should be a little bit better in this ball game. They're facing an offense that has their own issues. Trevor Lawrence is a rookie back there at quarterback, and he's struggling. Their run game isn't popping off like it should, considering the depth they have in the backfield. And defensively, while they're young and growing, they're not there yet. And so if I'm Tennessee, I'm trying to find ways to make them communicate. I'm trying to find ways to take away their effectiveness on that side of the football and force those guys into bad decisions. If that can happen, Tennessee should be able to take care of business and win this ball game. I think they will. So I'm not worried about the Jaguars coming in and upsetting the Titans. The Titans really have to keep pace with the Indianapolis Colts, who are surging right now at the right time. And it's going to come down to those two teams in the division, in my opinion, Tennessee and Indianapolis. So it should be fun to watch down the stretch. This is a pivotal AFC South battle between those two teams. Vegas travels to Kansas City to take on the Chiefs. And lo and behold, this Chiefs defense has been playing outstanding. This is par for the course for defensive coordinator Steve Spagnuolo and what he's been able to do throughout the course of his tenure. As the season goes on, the defense just starts to get better and better and better. And we're seeing a defense that's frustrating quarterbacks. They are turning the ball over at a high clip. They're shutting down the run game. They're making you play ineffective, inefficient offense. And if you're the Raiders, who let one slip away, I felt as though against Washington last weekend, this is a bad matchup for you. And when you look at the Raiders last week, they had an opportunity to beat Washington. And when you think about their offense and how ineffective it was throwing the football, Derek Carr didn't look like the Derek Carr that we were talking about glowingly just a couple of weeks ago. He looked flat. The passing game just was ineffective. They couldn't really get anything going from a consistency standpoint or even from a cohesiveness standpoint. Everything looked out of sync. Now, credit their defense. Defense kept them in the ball game. They held Washington to 17 points, so that was enough. But the offense didn't help them out. If your defense is doing that type of thing, or those type of things, that type of effort out there on the field, you got to help them out by making plays, and that wasn't the case for the Raiders. Now they're facing a better defense with a much better offensive attack. I think this was an easy one for me, so I'm going with Kansas City to get the win over their AFC West rival, the Las Vegas Raiders. New Orleans travels up here to New York to take on the Jets. Now, this is going to be an interesting game. We just found out that Taysom Hill will get his second start of the season against this Jets offense and defense. And if we're being completely honest, Taysom Hill, even though they lost against the Cowboys, looked light years better than Trevor Siemian. That tells you how bad Trevor Siemian was when he was out there at quarterback. Now, Taysom Hill didn't do much better. When we talk about a guy that had 4 turnovers, 4 interceptions, but the game just flowed better through Taysom Hill. So we'll see with his second start, even though he has the injured finger, how well he should play. Now, they're going to be without Mark Ingram, but they do get back Alvin Kamara, which should help alleviate a little bit of the pressure. Defensively, they may be without a couple of guys because of COVID protocols, but this defense, I thought, was still active enough to frustrate Dallas, and they'll have a fighting chance. It's just about how much offense they could generate in this ball game. On the Jet side of things, you talk about Zach Wilson, a rookie quarterback. You just want to see growth. I thought we saw growth last weekend. They didn't win the game, but we still saw him have some success on offense. That's what you want to see him do as the season rolls along. It's not necessarily about wins and losses. Yes, you want to see him get them, but you also want to see him make progressive strides each and every week. I thought we saw that. Here's another opportunity. You're going to get a lot of opportunities on offense with the football because the Saints offense, I don't feel like will have success moving the ball consistently against the Jets. So the Jets defense will get some stops. Here's an opportunity for Zach Wilson to build some confidence and build it moving forward. And I also like the Jets to win this game. The Saints come in with the longest active losing streak in the NFL. They've lost 5 straight games, which is sad to see, but it shows you how important Jameis Winston was to that Saints football team, that Saints offense. I just don't see them having success. I think this will be the game where the Jets show some potential for the future. Yes, they're going to be without Corey Davis, but this is still an offense, I feel like, with Elijah Moore, Jamison Crowder, and what they have in the backfield. They can be a chunk play offense. I think we'll see them generate some chunk plays against New Orleans. I like the Jets to get the win. Let's take a quick commercial break and be back with more Football Game Plan's NFL All-32 show. Welcome back to Football Game Plan's NFL All-32 show. Emery Hunt, the czar of the playbook. We're here on Game Plus Network, bring you some football talk. And right now, let's look at Dallas taking on Washington. This is a big game in the NFC East. Washington right now seems to be teetering on that 7th spot. One, depends on what happens with the Eagles. They are in or they're out, but they are in the playoff hunt. They're right there at that 7th spot. And they're eyeing that number 1 spot in the NFC East. They want to take down the Dallas Cowboys, who got a very valuable win against New Orleans last week. It was a get-right game for the Cowboys. And if I'm looking at the Cowboys first and looking at some keys to victory, I'm definitely eyeing their offense and talking about their run game. Can they find ways to get both backs rolling early against this Washington football team defense? Everyone talks about the Tony Pollard run. The big 58-yard run against New Orleans, but that had to come outside on a crack toss. They didn't really run the football rather well. The Saints' defensive line was giving them fits all throughout that game. Washington's defensive line has the potential to do the same thing. So I want to see them be a little bit better in the run game, and that's going to be huge for Dallas, number 1. Number 2, defensively, you're facing Taylor Heineke. This is a guy that does a fantastic job of escaping that first pressure, creating outside the pocket, and finding open targets downfield. Now, he's going to be without one of his key targets in tight end Logan Thomas, who suffered a knee injury last weekend against the Raiders. But Dallas can't allow Heineke to escape the pocket and create. Make him play a one-dimensional game, and that should help them win that contest, because if you allow him to create these second chance plays, that's where he becomes most dangerous, and that's where teams have a problem with Washington's offense. And finally, if you have the opportunity to make plays in the special teams department, talking about your kicker, Greg Zuerlein, he has to convert on those. He has to make those plays. They can't leave points out there on the board. Washington's defense has been playing some very good football. And if you have an opportunity to put points up on the board, Zuerlein has to convert. And you also can't give up cheap yards on returns. For Washington, the biggest key for me is watching how they handle the first quarter surge. Dallas's defense, I feel as though, can come out hot, can come out firing on all cylinders. They're going to try to pressure Taylor Heineke. They're going to try to pressure these receivers to make plays. We know about their ability to turn the ball over. So you kind of want to see how they weather that first quarter storm. If they can do that, we've seen this as a scrappy team, a physical team, one that's going to fight all 60 minutes, and they're going to find a way to have success. I also want to see their run game be a little bit more dynamic. Right now, to be completely honest, I don't know if you knew, but Antonio Gibson is the leading rusher in the NFC. And so when you think about what he can do for this offense and how valuable he has been, you kind of want to see him be a little bit more, utilized a little bit more so in a run game. They should have some opportunities to run the football, in my opinion, against this Cowboys defense. We'll see if they can capitalize. And on the defensive side, it's about making the plays on Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott, he's starting to trust his ankle a little bit more so now that we're deeper into the season. You're seeing him getting outside the pocket and scramble. Be interested to see how much pressure they dial up early against Dak Prescott and throughout the game, because we know Washington tends to thrive on pressure. They have done a solid job all season long, and we'll see if that's the case here against the Cowboys. And again, when you're facing your division rival, all bets are off. You could throw the records out the window, all those cliches. But I'm going to go with the better offense here. Once again, I like Dallas to get the win and further just expand that gap they have right now in that NFC East. Washington will be game, and we'll see if they can win this ball game. Then I will start to take Washington a little bit more seriously as a playoff contender. But right now, I think Dallas is a little bit better than Washington, so I'm taking the Cowboys to get the win. Over in the NFC South, you have the Atlanta Falcons taking on the Carolina Panthers. Big game here for the Panthers, who fired their offensive coordinator, Joe Brady. They're coming off a bye week. So there's a lot of turmoil right now in Carolina. Matt Rule, the head coach, it seems like it has gotten progressively worse for him as the season has rolled along. So we don't know which Carolina Panthers team will show up. But for the Falcons, with their newfound run game with Cordero Patterson, how they're making everything look like a kickoff return for him and having him have success is huge for this offense. It's huge for their psyche, but they still are very inconsistent, very turnover prone, and those two things do not coincide. So some people may say this is the pillow fight of the week. I think we're going to see two teams with their backs up against the wall come out swinging, and it might be the most entertaining game of the weekend. So I'm excited to see how it plays out. I will trust Atlanta in this game. I just like what they're doing with their run game. I love those rookies out, those young players out there on defense getting better every week. Too much controversy right now in Carolina, and not a lot of stability. So I feel like Atlanta will go ahead on and get the win. Seattle goes out to Houston to take on the Texans. Texans just jettisoned their linebackers at Cunningham, who I think is one of the better linebackers in football. So he's now going on their defense. They benched Tyrod Taylor last weekend in favor for Davis Mills. So you talk about a team that's facing a lot of issues. In comes a team in Seattle that was able to get a win last week, did a great job in beating San Francisco. They found ways to get after Jimmy Garoppolo. They found ways to turn the ball over. They got a safety. We saw the passing game start to click a little bit more. Tyler Lockett just catches deep over routes every game. It's almost automatic. So they're playing well. Houston's not playing well. This seems like an easy one, right? It is an easy one. Take the Seahawks to win this one. They won't stub their toe on the Houston Texans. The Seahawks will get the win. Denver hosts the Lions. Can the Lions stack back-to-back wins? Can they, handle success? They got a win last week in a dramatic fashion. They probably should have 4 or 5 wins on the season if we're being completely honest. They faced a Denver team that really got smacked around by the Kansas City Chiefs. I thought that 20-play drive was fantastic, but they should have kicked the field goal, get some points. We saw how the game ended up playing out. It was a tight game, so their defense came to play. Their offense couldn't get out of its own way. They couldn't find ways to punch the ball into the end zone on a consistent basis. Bridgewater had some ugly turnovers. So they got to play a clean game here against Detroit. Otherwise, they're going to end up losing this one too. The Lions are coming in now with some confidence. They probably should have beaten Detroit on Thanksgiving. They got the win against the Minnesota Vikings. They actually match up, I feel as though, well versus this offense of Denver. I love what the Lions are doing in the secondary. I feel like they've gotten better in that capacity the last couple of weeks, so we'll see that carry over. I still don't trust Jared Goff. So for me, I'm taking the Broncos to get the win. I think Goff still is a liability there at quarterback, and we'll see that pressure from Denver turn up and get him up about the way. So I like Denver to get the win. San Francisco is traveling to Cincinnati. This is a game where you've two teams that are always on paper looking good, but they tend to be very inconsistent. Every time we're ready to put Cincinnati in the playoffs, they have a stinker like they did last week against the Chargers. However, I think the turning point of that ball game, there were two. When Jamar Chase dropped that touchdown pass, that was huge because that was going to be a touchdown. And also the fumble by Joe Mixon that ended up being a recovery for a touchdown because they were also going down to score and perhaps take the lead after they came back. So those were two critical turnovers. You cut those out, they played rather well. They're playing San Francisco. For whatever reason, the 49ers just can't get past that Seahawks bugaboo. Is Jimmy Garoppolo ready to keep a guy like Trey Lance on the bench? Or is it about time now for San Francisco to play the young guy, get him out there, put him in a game, and start building for next year? I think it's more of the latter. You got to start building for next year. We're tired of seeing Jimmy Garoppolo go out there, take sacks, make bad plays, not hit guys deep down the field when there are opportunities to do so. Put the rookie in there. At least you know there's going to be upside. And because they're facing a sputtering offense, I think Cincinnati will get the win here. San Francisco really needs to make that move and go on and play Trey Lance and just do the right thing by the future and get him ready to go. Buffalo, Tampa Bay. Buffalo played their best in the worst conditions I thought that they could. They still had a chance to win late. An errant pass by Josh Allen that ended up getting tipped and knocked away cost them an opportunity to win that game against New England. So will they let that one loss become two? We love to say that here. I don't think so. They're going to come in with a whole new game plan, whole new mindset, better conditions in Tampa. But if you're the Bucs, you're starting to roll right now. Your offense is clicking. Your defense is getting off the field. They're turning the ball over. You're facing a Buffalo team that may feel a little bit desperate. They're coming in 7-5 on the year. I look for a team like Tampa to take full advantage and knock them out knock them down again out of the win column and move on to 7-6. I think Tampa will get the win. They're playing really good football right now, so I'm taking the Bucs to push the Bills to yet another loss against a very good football team. So a couple more games we're going to get into. Chicago taking on Green Bay. We don't know if it's Andy Dalton. We don't know if it's Justin Fields. Either way, Green Bay will be able to take care of business. Much better offense, more consistent offense. They can run the football right now. I think that defense will get after Dalton or Fields and help them win that game. And lastly, the Rams are taking on the Chargers. Battle for first place. The Rams quietly are sliding. And I know they put that out there that, Matthew Stafford hasn't been healthy. Sure, okay, I'll roll with that. But you also have to put out there that he has struggled versus teams that are good. Insert a good football team. Arizona got healthier over the bye. They got better over the bye. They came off that bye and beat Chicago rather handily. And I think when you look at this matchup here, their defense is really good. Their offense is clicking. And I think because their defense is what it is and what they can do at the back seven level, their athleticism, I like them to take care of business here again. So I'm taking the Cardinals to knock out the Rams. So that's it for this edition of Football Game Plan's NFL All-32 show. Emery Hunt, the czar of the playbook. Be sure to follow me on all of my social media accounts. Don't forget to check out and subscribe to the Football Game Plan Network located at youtube.com/footballgameplan. Also subscribe on iTunes to Football Game Plan Podcast and leave us a 5-star rating. And we will see you guys in week number 15.
It's DUEUT. tell I see you by this point, you're reading my mind. It's time for football. We about to keep this thing moving. I'm about it, you're with it, let's do it. We gon' make this thing official, you heard me? If you're the best, then let's prove it. The goal is set to have a team become a unit, man. We about to keep this thing moving. I'm about it, you're with it, let's do it. We gon' make this thing official, you heard me? If you're the best, then let's prove it. The goal is set to have a team become a unit, yeah.